Why do some people seem to struggle constantly to make ends meet, while others experience a steady, almost natural climb in their financial capacity? If we look closely at the surface, we tend to blame the external environment. We blame the economy, we blame the market conditions, or we blame luck. But if we pull back the layers, we discover a much deeper truth. The economy changes, markets fluctuate, and luck is unevenly distributed. Yet, the trajectory of an individual's income remains remarkably consistent over time. Why is that? It is because your income level is not a reflection of what you wish for. It is a trailing indicator of your deeply ingrained daily rituals. It is the natural byproduct of your habits. To understand why your financial reality looks the way it does today, we have to look at 7 specific behavioral patterns that dictate how value is created, managed, and rewarded. The first pattern is the shift from consumption to production. Most people wake up and immediately ask themselves, what can I consume today? They consume media, they consume products, they consume the energy of others. But the individuals who operate at a high income level start with a fundamentally different question. What can I build today? They understand that wealth is a simple exchange of value. You cannot extract value from a system unless you are actively putting value into it. High earners focus their primary energy on creating solutions, building assets, and producing things that make other people's lives easier or better. The second pattern involves how we view the relationship between time and money. There is a common trap where we are taught to trade our hours directly for dollars. While this is a necessary starting point, it creates a hard ceiling on your potential. There are only 24 hours in a day, no matter who you are. The habit that shifts your financial tier is learning to decouple your income from your physical presence. High earners build systems, leverage technology, or collaborate with teams so that the value they produce can scale independently of the hours they personally put in. They don't just work hard inside a system. They spend their time building the system itself. The third pattern is the ruthless management of attention. In a world full of noise, focus has become the rarest and most valuable currency. Low-income patterns are often characterized by constant distraction, reacting to every notification, shifting from one bright idea to another, and letting the external world dictate the daily agenda. High earners treat their focus like a sacred asset. They understand that saying yes to a breakthrough opportunity requires saying no to 100 good distractions. They master the art of deep, uninterrupted work on the few things that actually move the needle. The fourth pattern changes how we look at challenges. When a major problem arises, the natural human instinct is to avoid it, complain about it, or pass it to someone else. But if you look at the market, the largest financial rewards always go to those who solve the heaviest, most complex problems. High earners cultivate the habit of leaning into complexity. They see friction not as a nuisance, but as an invitation. They know that if a problem is difficult to solve, the market will gladly pay a premium to whoever figures it out. Your income will always match the scale of the problems you are willing to resolve. The fifth pattern is the habit of continuous intellectual updates. Many people treat education as a phase of life that ends when they walk across a graduation stage. But the world changes fast, and old skills lose their value rapidly. High-income individuals view learning as a perpetual operational requirement. They read deeply, they seek out mentors, they analyze their failures, and they constantly update their mental models. They don't rely on what they knew yesterday to solve the problems of tomorrow. They keep their knowledge velocity higher than the rate of market change. The sixth pattern centers on emotional sovereignty regarding financial decisions. It is the balance between immediate gratification and long-term vision. The urge to look wealthy often destroys the ability to actually become wealthy. A low-income habit uses increased earnings to immediately buy status symbols, keeping the individual trapped on a financial treadmill. The high-earning habit prioritizes peace and leverage over applause. They reinvest their surplus into things that grow, allowing patience and compounding interest to do the heavy lifting. They are willing to look unimportant today so they can build true stability for tomorrow. Finally, the seventh pattern is the baseline of empathy and contribution. At the end of the day, a transaction only happens when trust is established. If you enter the market simply trying to take money from people, they will sense it and they will pull away. High earners have a habit of starting with contribution. They look at a business, a client, or an employer and ask, how can I genuinely help them win? By focusing entirely on making the other party successful, they build an unshakable foundation of trust. And in a free market, wealth naturally flows toward the places where trust is highest. Your income level is not an accident, and it is not a permanent sentence. It is a mirror. If you want to change the reflection in the mirror, you cannot simply wipe the glass. You have to change the object standing in front of it. By intentionally shifting these 7 habits, by moving from consumption to production, scaling your value, protecting your focus, welcoming hard problems, learning constantly, practicing patience, and leading with trust, you change who you are. And when you change your behavior, your financial reality has no choice but to follow. Your bank account is a trailing indicator of your daily rituals. Wealth is not a goal you achieve, but a byproduct of the identity your habits reinforce. To truly understand this concept, we must first change how we view cause and effect in our financial lives. Most people look at their bank statement at the end of the month and treat that number as a real-time reflection of their current reality. If the number is low, they feel an immediate flash of anxiety and try to fix the problem by looking for a quick external solution, like a new job, a sudden side hustle, or a lucky break. But this approach is fundamentally flawed because it treats the symptom rather than the cause. A bank account balance does not represent what you are doing today. It represents the mathematical accumulation of what you've been doing for the last 6 months, the last year, or even the last decade. It is a report card of the past. It is a trailing indicator, which means it is the final physical manifestation of an invisible sequence of behaviors that happened long before the money ever entered or left your account. When you focus entirely on the number itself, you are trying to change the score of a game that has already been played. To shift the trajectory of your income, you have to look past the trailing indicator and focus entirely on the leading indicators, which are your daily rituals. A ritual is not just a random action you take when you feel motivated. It is an automated behavioral pattern that you perform consistently, almost without thinking. These tiny, seemingly insignificant moments dictate the direction of your life. It is the choice to spend the first hour of your morning creating something valuable instead of scrolling through social media. It is the discipline to track every dollar that flows through your hands rather than living in financial ignorance. It is the willingness to read a chapter of a book that expands your professional competence instead of watching another hour of television. On any given Tuesday, choosing the harder, more productive option does not make you rich. Conversely, choosing the easier, comforting option does not make you poor. The danger lies in the fact that the consequences of our daily rituals are delayed because you do not see an immediate drop in your income when you waste a day or an immediate surge in your wealth when you work deeply. It is incredibly easy to mistake a lack of immediate consequences for a lack of long-term impact. But everything compounds. Your daily rituals are the bricks, and your financial reality is the house that those bricks eventually build. This brings us to a much deeper truth about human behavior. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems, and those systems are built on your identity. Wealth is not a destination that you reach by working yourself to the bone for a temporary period. If you force yourself to adopt new financial habits through sheer willpower alone while maintaining the internal identity of someone who struggles with money, you will eventually experience behavioral fatigue. Willpower is a finite resource. This is why people who suddenly win the lottery or receive a massive inheritance often lose it all. Within a few years, their external financial status changed, but their internal behavioral identity remained exactly the same. They still possess the daily rituals of a consumer rather than a producer. True. Sustainable financial growth only happens when wealth stops being an external goal you chase and becomes a natural byproduct of the person you have become. Your habits do not just change your bank account, they validate your identity. Every time you choose to invest in your skills, protect your focus, or deliver exceptional value to someone else, you are casting a vote for the type of person you believe you are. You are reinforcing the identity of a high earner. When that identity becomes deeply rooted, your daily rituals align with it naturally. You stop forcing yourself to do the things that create wealth. You do them because it is simply who you are. The financial reward is no longer something you have to actively pursue. It becomes the inevitable, trailing reflection of your daily execution. High-earning individuals do not work for money. They create scalable systems that solve specific human problems, shifting the focus from transactions to impact. To fully grasp the magnitude of this shift, we must examine the fundamental trap that catches the vast majority of the global workforce, the direct trade of time for money. From an early age, we are conditioned to believe that the path to financial security is linear. We are taught to acquire a skill, find an employer, and exchange an hour of our labor for a set number of dollars. While this linear relationship is a safe and necessary starting point for learning how the market works, it contains an architectural flaw that guarantees a hard ceiling on your financial potential. The flaw is simple math. No matter how intelligent, talented, or energetic you are, you only have 24 hours in a day. If your income is entirely tied to your physical presence and active labor, your earning potential is fundamentally constrained by the laws of time and physics. If you stop moving, the money stops flowing. High earners recognize this limitation early on, and they make a conscious structural decision to play an entirely different game. They stop focusing on how many hours they can work, and they start focusing on how much leverage they can build. This transition requires shifting your primary objective from securing a transaction to building a system. A system is an organized framework of processes, technology, assets, or human collaboration that can operate, deliver value, and generate revenue independently of your direct, minute-by-minute involvement. When you build a system, you are essentially disconnecting your earning power from your physical body. You are creating a mechanism that can solve problems for people while you are sleeping, while you are traveling, or while you are focusing your creative energy on building the next system. This is the difference between being a linear earner and a scalable creator. A linear earner asks, how can I get paid for doing this task? A scalable creator asks, how can I build a process that resolves this task automatically for thousands of people at once? The effort required to build a scalable system is often immense and front-loaded. It requires months or even years of concentrated work without immediate financial reward. But once the system is established, its capacity to scale is practically infinite. It allows you to move away from the exhausting cycle of constant manual labor and move toward a position of operational leverage where your input remains constant, but your output multiplies exponentially. However, a system is useless unless it is anchored by a deep understanding of human problems. Money does not exist in a vacuum, and it does not move by accident. It is a vehicle for transferring appreciation for value received. The market does not reward you based on how hard you try or how many hours you sweat. The market rewards you based on the perceived value of the problem you are solving. If you focus entirely on the accumulation of money, your strategies will naturally become short-term, transactional, and manipulative. You will look at every human interaction as a chance to extract a dollar, which inherently breeds distrust and limits your long-term growth. High earners flip this dynamic completely by focusing entirely on the scale of the impact. They look at the world around them and ask, where is the friction? What are people struggling with? How can I create a system that removes this pain point for as many people as possible? They realize that the money is simply a byproduct of the solution. If your system solves a minor problem for a few people, your income will be small. If your system solves a massive, complex problem for millions of people, your income will be historic. By prioritizing the structural resolution of human problems over the immediate chase for cash, you align your daily activities with the true laws of economic value, allowing wealth to flow to you as a natural consequence of your systemic impact. Income level is directly proportional to your ability to manage focus. Choosing what to ignore is more critical to financial growth than deciding what to pursue. In the modern economic landscape, we are flooded with an unprecedented amount of information, opportunities, and distractions. Historically, the primary barrier to financial advancement was a lack of access to information or resources. If you wanted to build wealth a century ago, you had to physically locate scarce data, find rare mentors, or secure hard-to-reach capital. Today, that dynamic has completely inverted. Information is virtually free, opportunities are endless, and the entire world is fighting for a slice of your mental real estate. Because of this radical shift, poverty in the modern era is rarely caused by a lack of options. More often, financial stagnation is caused by a complete saturation of priorities. When everything is amplified, nothing is clear. The individuals who struggle financially are typically those who treat their attention as an infinite resource, reacting to every shiny object, every viral trend, and every minor crisis that crosses their screen. They live in a perpetual state of cognitive fragmentation, spreading their energy so thinly across so many different fronts that they never generate enough force in any single direction to break through. To achieve a high level of income, you must treat your focus not as an optional mental habit, but as your primary economic asset. Every breakthrough, every scalable system, and every high-value solution requires a period of deep, uninterrupted cognitive processing. If your brain is constantly forced to switch contexts, moving from an important business problem to a casual text message, then to a news alert, and then back to work, you suffer from what psychologists call attention residue. A piece of your mind remains trapped in the previous distraction, drastically reducing your cognitive capacity for the task at hand. High earners look at this dynamic and realize that their earning potential is explicitly bound to the depth of their focus. They understand that a single hour of hyper-concentrated, uninterrupted execution is worth more to the market than an entire week of distracted, chaotic multitasking. They don't just try to avoid distractions when they feel overwhelmed. They proactively engineer their environments to make distraction impossible. They build walls around their attention because they know that if they cannot control their focus, they cannot control their time, and if they cannot control their time, they can never scale their value. This realization forces a massive shift in strategy, moving from a mindset of accumulation to a mindset of elimination. When people want to increase their income, their instinctive reaction is to add more things to their plate. They think they need to start 3 different side hustles, learn 5 new unrelated skills, and say yes to every random networking request that comes their way. But this approach creates a fatal trap. By deciding what to pursue without first choosing what to ignore, you create a life of chaotic movement without actual progress. You become a mile wide and an inch deep. True financial leverage comes from the exact opposite approach, finding the 1 or 2 critical levers that actually generate exponential value and ruthlessly cutting away everything else. This requires an immense amount of discipline because the things you have to ignore are rarely bad things. They are usually good, interesting, and profitable opportunities that simply happen to be distractions from your primary mission. Saying yes to a mediocre opportunity inherently means saying no to the deep focus required for historic breakthrough. High earners master the uncomfortable art of the strategic refusal. They are willing to look narrow-minded or disconnected to the outside world because they understand that the market does not reward general business. The market rewards mastery, and mastery demands that you choose what to ignore so your focus can burn a clean, deep path toward your highest financial potential. Sustainable wealth requires updating your mental software. High earners view learning not as a finished phase of life, but as a continuous operational requirement. To understand why this habit directly dictates your financial ceiling, we have to look at how quickly the world around us evolves. The vast majority of people operate under an industrial era mindset when it comes to education. They are conditioned to believe that learning is a linear track with a clear starting line and a definitive finish line. You go to school, you perhaps attend a university or learn a trade, you acquire a specific set of skills, and then you step across a graduation stage into the workforce. At that exact moment, for most individuals, the active pursuit of new knowledge completely stops. They believe their mental software is fully loaded and ready for the next 40 years of their career. They view their education as an asset they have permanently unlocked. rather than a depreciating currency that requires constant reinvestment. This static approach to knowledge works perfectly in a slow-moving, predictable world. But in a fast-paced, technologically driven economy, relying on yesterday's information to solve tomorrow's problems is a guaranteed recipe for financial obsolescence. When you treat your knowledge as fixed, you expose yourself to a brutal economic reality, the rapid half-life of skills. The tools, strategies, and methodologies that are highly profitable today may become completely irrelevant or automated tomorrow. If your income is tied exclusively to a static skill set, your value to the market drops a little bit every single day you choose not to update your mind. High earners understand this dynamic perfectly. They do not view their brains as storage units for fixed facts, but as processing engines that require constant software updates. They look at learning not as a luxury, a hobby, or something they will get around to when they have free time, but as a non-negotiable operational requirement for their daily survival and growth. They recognize that intellectual stagnation is the ultimate financial risk. If the rate of change outside your mind is faster than the rate of change inside your mind, you are actively moving backward, regardless of how hard you are working at your current job. To maintain a high level of income, you must transition from a mindset of passive absorption to a strategy of aggressive, targeted intellectual curiosity. High earners approach learning with a specific intent. They want to expand their mental model so they can see the world more clearly and make better high-stakes decisions. They understand that a single higher quality insight, a deeper understanding of human psychology, or a better grasp of an emerging technological trend can completely alter the trajectory of their business or career. This requires a systematic approach to what they consume. They don't just passively scroll through random articles or default to low-value entertainment. They read deeply, seek out the highest quality thinkers in their field, study history to find recurring patterns, and actively analyze their own failures to extract the hidden lessons. They treat their minds like an elite athlete treats their body, carefully curating the intellectual inputs they allow inside. Furthermore, this continuous update of your mental software fundamentally changes how you respond to market disruption. When a massive shift occurs in an industry, whether it is a new piece of technology, an economic downturn, or a change in consumer behavior, the static earner experiences panic. Their fixed skill set is threatened, and because they have forgotten how to learn, they dig their heels in and resist the change, which ultimately leads to a decline in their income. High earners, on the other hand, view market disruption as a massive opportunity. Because they are already in the habit of constantly updating their software, they simply adapt to the new terrain faster than everyone else. They drop their outdated mental models without sentimentality and immediately begin downloading the new knowledge required to navigate the new reality. They understand that the market doesn't care about what you used to know, it only cares about the value you can deliver right now. By committing to learning as a continuous lifestyle, you ensure that your intellectual velocity always outpaces the rate of market decay, allowing your financial capacity to grow steadily over time. The ultimate differentiator of financial status is the willingness to absorb short-term discomfort and serve others first, building trust that converts into long-term equity. To fully appreciate why this behavioral pattern separates the highest earners from the rest of the world, we must look at the natural human instinct towards self-preservation and immediate gratification. When most people enter a marketplace, a workplace, or a negotiation, they do so with a transactional mindset focused entirely on their own immediate needs. They ask themselves, what can I get out of this right now? How much am I going to be paid today? What is my immediate return on investment? This inward-focused approach seems logical on the surface, but it creates an invisible barrier to true wealth. When your primary motivation is extraction, every interaction becomes a zero-sum game where you are trying to maximize your gain while minimizing your effort. The people around you, whether they are clients, employers, or partners, instinctively sense this transactional energy. They recognize that you are serving them only to the extent that it serves you, which breeds caution, hesitation, and a fundamental lack of trust. High earners operate on a completely different psychological wavelength, practicing what can be described as a delayed empathy loop. They understand that before you can harvest value from any ecosystem, you must first plant, nurture, and grow that value. This requires a profound willingness to absorb short-term discomfort. This discomfort might look like working for months to develop a solution without any guarantee of a payout, offering deeply researched insights to a prospective client for free, or doing the heavy lifting on a project just to ensure a partner succeeds. To the transactional mind, this looks like a foolish waste of time and energy. It looks like losing. But high earners are not playing a short-term game. They view this upfront investment of effort and empathy as the only reliable way to establish unshakable market trust. They know that in a world where everyone is shouting for attention and looking for a quick buck, the person who steps forward and genuinely asks, "How can I help you win?" instantly stands out from the crowd. By prioritizing service over extraction, you are building an invisible asset that is far more valuable than immediate cash. You are building long-term equity in the minds of others. Trust is the ultimate lubricant of commerce. When people trust your intentions, believe in your competence, and feel that you genuinely care about their outcomes, the nature of the relationship changes entirely. You are no longer a vendor trying to make a sale. You become a vital, indispensable partner. Clients stop negotiating over pennies and start paying a premium just to stay associated with you. Employers stop looking at you as an expense and start viewing you as a cornerstone asset. Opportunities that are never posted on public job boards or open markets are quietly brought to your attention because people want to do business with individuals they trust. This is the compounding nature of the delayed empathy loop. The short-term discomfort you absorb by serving first eventually transforms into a massive wave of reputational goodwill that pays dividends for decades. Ultimately, this principle forces a total re-evaluation of how wealth is generated. Money is not something you chase. Money is something that ensues as a consequence of value creation. If you try to bypass the service phase and jump straight to the collection phase, your income will always be fragile and limited to small, exhausting transactions. But when you master the discipline of putting the needs of the system or the client ahead of your own immediate comfort, you build a massive reservoir of value. You create a psychological debt in the market where people naturally want to see you succeed because you have been a catalyst for their success. High earners do not achieve their status because they are better at taking. They achieve it because they have built a system and a reputation that allows them to give it a scale most people cannot even comprehend. By committing to this loop of empathy and contribution, you shift your financial potential from a linear struggle into an exponential trajectory, allowing your income to become a true reflection of the deep trust you have earned. Ultimately, your income level is not a random number determined by fate, luck, or external economic forces. It is a direct reflection of the invisible infrastructure of your daily life. The market does not reward what you desperately want. It rewards the person you choose to become through the execution of your habits. When you stop focusing on the immediate transaction and begin focusing on the scale of your production, when you decouple your value from the constraints of your physical hours, when you ruthlessly eliminate distraction to protect your focus, when you actively seek out the heaviest problems to solve, when you treat learning as a permanent operational requirement, and when you absorb short-term discomfort to lead with trust and contribution, your financial reality shifts automatically. Wealth is simply the trailing indicator of a life structured around impact, value, and discipline. If you want to change the flow of your income, you must first change the direction of your daily rituals. Build the system, update your software, serve others first, and the wealth you seek will have no choice but to follow.